I saw a cartoon the other day. It was a little boy and an old man sitting on the couch together. And the little boy was saying to the old man, "Yeah, I didn't believe in reincarnation either when I was your age." Reincarnation is, as the festival says, the soul's long journey through time and space. And that journey is away from God and back to God. It doesn't have to be a long journey. There is no time anyway. We can make it as long or as short as we desire. And it's important when we when we think of that journey of this lifetime, that we think in terms of what Master told us, that this world, this life, is for our education and entertainment. And it's important to meditate on those words and try to feel in your heart, what does that feel like if I view the world as entertainment or education, not as personal attack, not as they are out to get me, or everything is irritating me, but rather to think in terms of everything that comes is given by God to teach me, to help me, and to give me a gift. If we have that mindset, then everything shifts. I love what Master said, this world is a nest of trouble. But with God, it becomes a nest of fun. We can change it. We can change the way we experience everything. If we can fill our minds with the Word of God, if we can fill our hearts with trust and faith and growing devotion to God, everything changes. Everything becomes from Him. We see Him everywhere. We have to become centered in ourselves and in that consciousness. That's why this word pillar is so important. Him who overcometh will I make a pillar in the house of my God, and he shall go no more out. We want to be firm in that God consciousness, firm in our faith, in our willingness to take whatever God gives us with equanimity, with trust, with ever-growing love. It's not easy. It is a challenge. We have our work cut out for us, but it's not as though God is trying to wrest from us this treasure of the ego, and he's trying to take something terribly important away from us. He's trying to take our pain away from us. There is another cartoon. I may have told you this before, but I love this one. There's a little chubby guy sitting on his bed. He's obviously just woken up. And he's sitting there. And he's strategically placed a sign on the wall where he will see it when he gets up. And it says, "First the pants, then the shoes." And he's obviously had a lot of trouble with this in the past. The pants don't fit over the shoes. You have to do the pants first. And so in thinking of that little guy, I often think I should have a sign that says, "Ego equals pain." Get rid of it. Overcome. Don't give in to the weakness of thinking I and mine and what I want and what's good for me and how everything affects me, and self-involvement, selfishness. Like the Festival of Light says, the ego says, what else is wisdom if not to keep what is mine for myself? That's how the ego thinks, and that is pain. That's why the festival also says self-love is pain. The fruit of self-love is pain, whereas fruit of love for God is joy. That's what we want. None of the things that happen to us are to just skewer us with suffering. God is not doing that. We do that to ourselves. We've heard so often the phrase, let go and let God. It's just a cliche. We've heard it a million times, but there is truth in that. Let it go. The Bhagavad Gita tells us very clearly that desire is the root of all pain. When we have a thwarted desire, we get angry. This world right now especially is so filled with anger and resentment, hatred. We have to take every one of those negative emotions when they come up in our hearts, trace them back. Why am I angry? Inevitably, it is a thwarted desire. Let that desire go. It is giving you nothing but pain. Resentment, anger, hatred, trace it back. What is the desire that your way that you're not getting? And let it go. Be at peace. The test of this world is to live in that peace, to find it in ourselves and to live there, to give that to every person we meet. There's someone here who has a bumper sticker that says, less drama, more Dharma. And I just love that bumper sticker. And the truth of it is that the more we live in Dharma, the more we live centered in peace, centered in kindness, not thinking about how everything affects me and whether I like it or not, and all that sort of ego talk that can go on. But the more we think of what is right, what does Master say about this? What is the dharmic way to live? The more we live in that, the less drama there is. We don't need the drama. We need to be a channel of peace in this world. There are two quotations that I wanted to share with you. I've been studying the second coming of Christ in this season. It's a great work to get into. And Yogananda is talking about how we come to where we are in this reincarnation, in this life, how we've gotten to this place. And he says, good or bad judgment has created our good or bad habits, which in turn create good or bad hereditary tendencies. So the origin of all evil, in other words, the origin of all misery and suffering, is bad judgment. In other words, bad choices. That's why it's so important to study the teachings, to have them going through your mind, through your heart, so that you can discriminate and you can say, yeah, I just really would like to punch this person right now, but I'm not going to, because you know what? anger is never the right choice. And I'm going to be, this quotation, see if I can remember it, that Swami used to say, better to be silent and thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Better to be quiet inside, go inside, find out what the root of that anger is. Cauterize it through meditation. And I will just close with this other quotation that I found in the same book. You know, you can keep going back to these books over and over and over, and they put new things in there that you've never read before. We have such a gift, the freedom to study these teachings, the freedom to go deep, to gather like this with like-minded people who want to love God. You know, people often say, I don't feel like I have enough devotion. I don't know how to love God more. Well, the first way to start is to study His Word, to ask, God, can you help me? To draw on the resources that we have, to try to tune in to what God is saying to you all the time. He is knocking on the door of our consciousness, asking us if He can come in. We just have to open the door. We have to open our eyes and see that He's everywhere. So Master says this, immortal souls can only expect to be free by utterly destroying the seeds of earthly desires. And you do that by divine contact with God through meditation. Doesn't it always come back to that? We really do have to meditate. These teachings work really well if we practice them. This reminds the soul of the unending fulfillment in the immortal inheritance of bliss, which makes the desires of earthly ways unnecessary and ridiculous. So, just like that saint in the autobiography who had been very, very wealthy, and he renounced all of his family wealth and became a great devotee and saint of God. And people said, oh, you've given up so much to explore the spiritual life. And he said, you have it wrong. I've given up a few paltry pennies for the enormous wealth of infinity. So that is what we need to focus on. Focus on giving. Don't be selfish in the ego. You know, the ego just thinks about itself, and it'll never be happy that way. Think of others, give to others. It's the perfect Christmas season to explore that thought. It doesn't have to be expensive presents. It has to be your love, your thoughtfulness, your kindness. Make those the focus of your life. Giving whatever consciousness of God that you have, give that to all. And you will see that the desires of earthly ways are unnecessary and ridiculous.
There's another Bible passage that came up as I was studying for this topic. Christ is saying, take no thought for the morrow. Take no thought for anything beyond today. In fact, he goes on to say, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof, which you sort of wonder without the context of somebody watching his face and saying, oh, well, what he really meant was this. You sort of wonder if he had a smile on his face as he was saying that. I mean, was he sort of getting people to appreciate the situation, or was he being very stern? What struck me is that teaching, which taken to an extreme, he's saying don't carry any money, don't worry about what you're going to eat, don't worry about what you're going to wear. I mean, my goodness, in this culture, we worry a lot about those things. We pay attention to our retirement. We pay attention to our, all of these. Do we have insurance? Insurance on the car, insurance on our health, insurance on this, that, and the other thing. Well, what struck me is take no thought for the morrow means don't worry about tomorrow. Means be right here. Stay with today. Stick with today. That's where it's all happening anyway. Yesterday and tomorrow are dreams. Tomorrow will come in its own time, and there's nothing much we can do about it now. We can't. I remember as a child, there were certain experiences that really called to my heart, and one of them was Christmas morning. There were going to be a lot of presents under the tree, and the excitement of going after those presents and tearing them open was, and so the 24th would come, Christmas Eve would come, and it would be like, that thought of take no thought for the morrow. I mean, that's about all there was thought of the morrow. It's all about tomorrow. Actually, in a certain way, it was all about tonight, because tonight, Christmas Eve night, we got to open one present. That was our tradition in the family. So, at least the process began, the excitement. And there'd be certain ones, we would shake them, pick them up and listen to them. And there'd be a big box, and you didn't have any idea what was in the big box. Anyway, it was all terribly exciting. Well, it's natural to get caught up in that. And all Christ is saying is, today is the day where if you act, if you give what you have today, if you put your heart into today, you have happiness today. You don't have to regret yesterday or be fearful or apprehensive or longing for tomorrow, because that longing doesn't give you today. That longing can't fulfill what is possible for you to have today, and today is the only time you can ever be happy. It's always got to be right now. Swamiji repeated something that Master said about reincarnation. What it is that keeps us coming back. What it is that keeps us bound on this wheel. Nirmala quoted one phrase, and this is another way of looking at it. He said two things, two very simple words: longing and regret. Those are the two things that bring us back life after life after life. We get to the end, we look through think of looking through all the photos on your hard drive, all the photos on your phone of life, the movie of your life is now playing, and you get to look at all the little scenes that happened. And what is the sum of all of that? Is it contentment and joy, or is it longing and regret? And if there's longing and regret there, then we get to come back to have those things fulfilled. This is the place where you get to work all those things out. You want to have the thing you felt like you didn't have? Okay. You want to fix the thing that you didn't do correctly, didn't work out the way you wanted it to? Either of those things, they bring you back. I had a dream recently, and it was an interesting experience. I have not had a lot of dreams of Swami Kriyananda, who we were very close with, since his passing, but every so often one will come along, and usually it comes with a lesson. And in this particular one, I was sort of, in my consciousness, I was sort of thrown back to the way I related to him when I was very young and early on the path, which was I was very nervous around him. He was a larger-than-life, high-energy being, and I always felt like I was going to screw something up and that he would therefore reject me. And that was playing in this dream. And so I was doing something that in the dream I was thinking, oh, this must be annoying to him. Which of course is completely my projection. He didn't make a practice of getting annoyed about much of anything. But nevertheless, for me, in the dream, I was aware that my behavior, which, out of the spectrum of life might have been 1,000th or 1,000,000th of my life, but still, it was a little repetitive behavior. And it taught me something, because if I were to look back to the interactions that I had with Swami, I thought, there were certain things that I could have done better. And he would drop little hints every so often, and it wasn't for his sake, it was for my sake or for our sake. But they were hints, they were gentle. It wasn't, boom! He wasn't, a friend of ours had a colorful way of putting it. There were a few times when he could be very strong with us. And he described the experience as, he applied his boot of wisdom to my seat of understanding. So yes, there were times when there was vigor in it, but most often he tried to do it in a subtle way, because that's how we would learn. We had to put our own attention around it. We had to rise to the occasion. We were listening to a talk yesterday in the retreat that he had given on Thanksgiving in 1978, and he was describing how, it was a wonderful talk, but he was describing how, what the heck was he describing? It was something interesting. Well, it'll come to me. Anyway, in this talk, he kept referring to the ways that, I know what it was. He was saying that Yogananda would be very subtle in his response to people. And he could be very affirmative, especially to those who were fairly new. But for the serious disciples, he was often quite strong with them. And he would discipline them sometimes fairly severely. But it was not to harm them. It was to help them. It was to help them to be free. It was to help them to overcome whatever it was that was holding them back. And in some cases, it was holding them back fairly strongly, and it took some jostling, it took some vigorous energy on his part to dislodge that delusion. And in our lives, we will often find, if you look back years and years and years, you'll often one thing will stand out. I remember it's a silly little experience, but it's one thing that stood out. I had a wonderful childhood, wonderful family, but I remember this one time when I don't know, I suppose I was 9 or 10 years old. I think I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and my class was putting on a shortened version of the play Hamlet. And the teacher was very creative and insightful. And she asked everybody what they want. Everybody had to be part of it. Well, I didn't want to be part of it. I had no use for drama. I didn't want to memorize lines, So she said, so everybody signed up for something except me. So I had nothing, no role at all at this point. She said, all right, okay. Why don't you be the understudy for Hamlet? In other words, be the backup plan. I said, all right, I could do that, because he'll do it anyway, and I won't have to, and it'll be good. You can see where this is going. So came the week of, and I worked on the lines. It was interesting. It was a 45-minute version of Hamlet, which of course is really only about a third of Hamlet. It goes on for quite a while. But still, you can pack a lot into 45 minutes. There's a lot, and Hamlet, being the main character, has a heck of a lot of lines. Well, there was sword fights, and boys dressing up in tights, that just didn't do anything for me. I really had no use for that at all. But, that was the costume. Okay, I did it. I remember the hair on my legs stuck through the tights. It looked really weird. Anyway, but we got to fight with swords. That was fun. That was good. But so I rehearsed a little as Hamlet in various scenes. Well, then came the days right leading up to when we were going to do the play, and naturally Hamlet, the main guy, got sick and he couldn't do it. So I had to do it. But I worked at it, and I felt like I had done a pretty good job with it. So came the day of, and I was going to have to do the thing. And I told my mom when to come, because the parents were invited to come and watch this. So what did I do? I muffed it. I told her the time that it was over, not the time that it began.
Oh.
And so she faithfully arrived. It started at 10, it finished at 11 type of thing. She faithfully walked in the door at 11 to see the absolutely final scene of the play. She arrived 2 or 3 minutes early, saw the closing of the play, where, of course, everybody's dead on the ground. Little boys and, scattered all around. And I was crushed because I had blown it. She did exactly what I had asked her to do. She came right then, but I had not put my attention on that detail. And so often in life, it's a detail, it's attentiveness. Were we paying attention? Did we tune in? And that's the source of all the little stuff that comes along afterwards. And sooner or later, we just learn to release it. There's a simple question that we are asked by the divine. And we get asked that question in intuitive ways, and we also get asked the question overtly. Are you satisfied? In other words, are you finished playing on the playground? Did you have your recess? Are you finished now? Are you done? Are you satisfied? And we get to the end of a lifetime, and we get to look at the movie, we get to look at the drama. Are you satisfied? And if you are, fine, move on. And if you're not, if there's longing, if there's regret, come back, play it over again, play it with a new set of characters if you have to, play it with the ones you got to know a little bit, whatever. Playing different roles, of course, naturally. All of us get to make that choice. All of us get to answer that question. And it's a privilege. It's not, we may think of this as the horrible, scary, frightening final exam of life. Oh, my goodness, did I study enough? No, it's a very simple question. Are you satisfied? Did you accomplish what you came here to accomplish? And if you did, you move on into the light. Very simple. And if not, then you get to come back and do it again. And get to play the light and shadow, darkness and light, all over again. And we've all done this. We've all done this many times over. And so as we meditate, whether we know how to meditate or not, everyone meditates in their heart when they're quiet. Everyone has the opportunity in the stillness of the night to offer a prayer to God. Devotion is nothing more than yearning. The yearning of our heart speaks more clearly than any well-crafted, carefully reasoned, carefully worded prayer. The prayer of our heart comes up even without words. In the Festival of Light, Swami says, with wordless yearning, a prayer goes up from earth. A prayer goes up from each of our hearts with wordless yearning. Let us offer that prayer. God will respond to us in the language of our hearts, in the language that speaks to each and every one of us. He will respond, and he will show us the way to freedom, the way to divine joy. Namaste.